Today we ask ourselves, what are the 10 best thrash metal albums outside of the big four? Welcome back to the heaviest show in the universe. My name is Kreator, and if you love in-depth metal reviews, discussion, and theories about the greatest goat genre in the history of the universe, then go down below and sauce me one of these bad boys. Smash that subscribe button for me so you never miss an episode. I implore you to stick around even through the choices that trigger you, because I know there will be some that will, and you will see that there are definitely some unsung bangers at the top of this list. The parameters I used to gauge these albums took a bunch of different things into account. I took everything from the way the albums were written in regards to ingenuity and progressive aspects. For instance, how did this album work to push thrash metal into more than just chugga 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 with chromatic ascension of power chords? I also took the production quality of the album into account, and I also asked myself, does this still sound good in 2021? And yes, that means that there are indeed new wave of thrash metal bands on this list, because while a lot of them just copied what the 80s bands were doing, a lot of them have released amazing albums that triumph over anything that happened in the 80s. Basically, I didn't want influence to be the only thing that counted when ranking these albums, because there are some tier albums that have influenced a lot of music. Without further ado, let's get to number 10. I know a lot of you are clamoring for Pleasure to Kill or even Violent Revolution here, but let me tell you what this album does that those don't. Pleasure to Kill honestly doesn't stand up. The production quality sounds like garbage, the drums are messy and hard to make out, and the riffs are repetitive. And this is an album that I was talking about when it comes to a less than great album being completely and utterly influential on a lot of music. And while Violent Revolution does solve a lot of those problems that I just mentioned, I felt like it lacked the ferocity of extreme aggression. This album is solid all the way through. No weak tracks and some solid production considering their place in the scene at the time. Everything from the bass and drums to the vocals sounds so much more clear and pronounced, with Millie's voice performance really shining through on this album compared to previous efforts. The playing is incredibly tight, and much like Pleasure to Kill, it exemplified Kreator's heavy influence on the death metal scene. There's not much more to say about this release. In my opinion, it's Kreator's best overall effort, and it deserves its spot on this list for its solid production quality, lasting legacy, and overall tight instrumentation. And for number 9, I imagine this is where I'll start to see some backlash. First and foremost, the bass playing on this album is incredibly unique and funky, absolutely heavy, and it adds something to thrash that I cannot believe other thrash bands have not tried to incorporate before. And that's making the bass more than just a depth piece. This is one of the grooviest, funkiest albums on this list, and it's showcasing Havok's technical ability to the highest level. Songs like Hang 'Em High show off their perfected thrash chops, while Ingsoc, my personal favorite song on the album, shows their ability to play with timing, tempo, and sound. Some of these riffs are incredibly razor edge precise. And it put Havok on the map as one of the top bands in the thrash revival. Some have said that their album after this, V, was more technically proficient and overall better, but I think I disagree. While they do showcase some immaturity on this album, mainly the overuse of intros, and some of the lyrics being yelled like an angry teenager, I feel that the speed and replayability of this album triumphs over V every single time. And that's mainly due to the absolutely memorable and tight riffing that's in place throughout every song. V just isn't nearly as tight and together as this album, and that's why it deserves its spot on this list. And next up, we do indeed have another new wave of thrash metal band. I think first and foremost, I want to applaud the production quality of this album. This album exemplifies what thrash can sound like at its pinnacle without going too technical or melodic. That's not to say that there aren't any fantastic melodies on here. Warbringer are able to take their tight layered chops and play with the tempo of the album with softer, more melodic songs like Defiance of Fate. And of course, Heart of Darkness without having to lose an inch of their powerful sound. Every song on this album is so full of life and passion and creativity. And some of these riffs are so tight and thrashy all at the same time. It's truly an impressive sound, and one that proves that these new thrash bands can not only build on what they did in the 80s, but completely surpass them. And next up, we're going all the way to Denmark with this epic release. Unfortunately, I feel like this album never gets the credit it deserves from the higher ups of the metal community. You rarely find this album on top thrash lists, and it belongs here even if you include the big four. It does something that often is missed in thrash metal, and that is create awesome hooks that the crowd can sing along to, which is often what made the big four so popular when you think of songs like Creeping Death, Peace Sells, and Indians. The Egyptian, Middle Eastern, Phrygian type sound is incredibly intuitive, especially within thrash metal, and it adds an element that is almost always sorely lacking on these lists. It's super unfortunate that this album never gets the true credit it deserves outside of a small part of the metal community, because it's incredibly technical and melodic and adds so many elements that makes thrash so more full of life, and it adds so many elements that thrash metal's always been lacking. It's an absolute classic gem that was hard to place this low, but let's be honest, at this point in the list, we're splitting hairs between these albums. And with this next album, we're taking it back to the modern age. This album is almost the pinnacle of thrash outside of the big four. It takes every single element that makes all the greatest thrash albums so great, like speed and technicality and heaviness and melody and harmony and superb riffage, and crams it all into one tightly produced and fantastic package. The only thing that is truly holding this album back is that it's still relatively young, and thrash isn't as impactful as it was in the 80s. But I would be surprised if the next wave of metalheads weren't taking heavy inspiration from this album. It doesn't necessarily add anything new to the genre, but it is the genre personified in this modern age. If someone asks what modern thrash or even just thrash metal is all about, you can throw them this album. They are the Metallica of modern thrash, and this is the master of puppets of modern thrash. Alright, so those are albums 10 through 6, and how bad do you want to just yell and scream at how bad and stupid my choices are? Let me know down below. I can't wait to hear about how much of a poser I am, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for your support. And of course, I want to hear what your numbers 10 through 6 are. So definitely let me know about that in the comments below. I can't wait to see what you guys have to say. And of course, stay tuned for the latter half of the list coming at you soon. Don't forget to go down below and sauce me one of these bad boys. Smash that subscribe button for me, and we will see you on the next episode of the heaviest show in the universe. Long live metal.